Cymatic schematics, mind passages, active, climactic, rhyme patterns, divine facets shine in the blackness. Third eye aligned with the atlas, master the madness, blurred signs and immaculate passages, like kids lacking a master, galactic vastness. I write through whiz of oracular pastures. I'm the gladdest of bastards when I rap mathematical data on this astral ladder. This had to be fathomed by Her Majesty's atoms. I grasp the tree of Adam, freeze the blasphemous as I free the magic from the breezes passing. The degrees you're grasping, decease your past ghastly. I breathe till I pass.
The knowledge of good and evil. The separation. Many read the story of Adam and Eve in the garden and take it to be literal. And in one sense, that is just an interpretation at a certain level. But at the deepest level is what I come to reveal. And I do not argue with people who take it literal. If you want to take it literal, that's fine. But when one takes it literal, they will put the blame on a man, Adam, who separated us from God. And now we got another man, Jesus Christ, who tries to bring us back. Which, in both of those stories, is absolutely true. But it's even truer in a spiritual sense. And so that's what I come to bring about the story of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the separation. See, the story of Adam and Eve, it's just the story of man in a spiritual sense. It's just the story of man. And when I say man, I mean you, the soul, or what people call soul, the being. It's a story of every individual being. And so in the story, Eve and Adam partake of a fruit, which was forbidden by God. And the reason it was forbidden, which we'll come to find out, is later, once they partake of it, they find themselves enlightened, right? They have come from one understanding to another. And now they see themselves naked, and they have clothed themselves. Why did they clothe themselves? How did they realize they were naked? Because at one point, they didn't identify with anything. They were absent of identity. They only identified with the source or with God. But once they partook of this knowledge, they started to identify with the flesh. And thus they realized, I am naked and I have to cover myself. And so this is the beginning, or this story signifies the beginning of man's suffering. This is the beginning of man's suffering. And so man's suffering basically is to feel one's own existence. This is the greatest suffering known to man, to feel one's own existence, meaning the individual existence. And without ever reading the story, this is known. I mean, the Buddha in the 6th century BC said, life is suffering. Meaning, not that life is suffering, but the finite individual self, his life is suffering. Because life is a movement. And so nothing can ever be grasped onto forever. And so when you grasp onto something, you're eventually going to lose it, and thus it causes suffering. Whether it's a good time, a partner, a friend, money, a house, a car, all these things come and go. And we try to grasp at them like they're for eternal. And so to feel one's own existence is the greatest suffering possible to man. And this is what the story of this Adam and Eve is talking about. And see, even people who read the story really don't understand that. And yet, in all this being man's greatest suffering, that he finds himself separated by being an individual, limited self, he never desires not to be. Man loves his individual existence. And this is really the veil that separates you from God. We rejoice in our own being. But at the same time, we see that this being brings suffering and want to be freed from it. And so this is why it tells the story of the first Adam, sin came into the world, and the second Adam, which is Christ, brings that freedom, or brings us back to that freedom. And so this imperfect state of incompleteness or isolation, a separation from that which is whole, brings anguish and suffering. And this anguish and suffering arises not because of existence or the person's existence, but because of his separated existence. Again, 99% of humans feel separated, isolated, independent in a world of many independent beings. This is what brings anguish and suffering. And so, as it's written in the Bible and other holy scriptures, people go around the earth seeking, where has God hidden himself? Why have you hid yourself from me? The one I am looking for. The only reason he is hidden is because this separate self exists. And the only reason this separate self exists is not because of any change in the appearances, any change in the world. Because many walk around and see no separation, although there are many forms. It's only in the belief or the knowledge that you believe in, that you are a separate, finite being, that makes you become mortal. It is only in thoughts. This is where all suffering resides, in the mind. For instance, if you were at peace right now, and I told you your wife or your kids or your loved one had just been in a car accident, all of a sudden your mind and body begin to take on distressful feelings and thoughts. Just by a few words put in the mind, it brings suffering to you. Because all suffering exists in the mind. And the reason it exists in the mind is because you feel separated from your source. And this separation is the veil. See, again, let me make it clear. The suffering of man is not that he is, but that he is as he is. He is as he believes himself to be. A man is as he thinks. And this is why you must purify the mind. Because your whole thinking is wrong. Your whole outlook of life. You believe that which is an illusion to be reality. And so you must be wiped away of the illusion, purified of the illusion, to see the one reality. The problem is not existence, because I look at the same world as many others see. But I only see light, while others see darkness. And it's because what is an illusion is not reality. And what people take as reality is an illusion. And the only way to wake up from the illusion is to realize that God is your being. And in him you are what you are. In the earthen vessel that you believe yourself to be is a hidden treasure. And once this treasure chest is opened, nothing but a bright light shines from it. And all you see is light. What I used to call darkness, I no longer look at it limited, meaning in a single aspect. I see it as a movement of God, and this power understands what he is doing in the earth. I understand that nothing truly dies. See, when you open this treasure chest that remains hidden, as it were, because of the separation in the so-called beginning, it reveals all things to you, meaning your immortality. Like I said earlier, no one dies because, and let me give you an example of what I mean no one truly dies, is that unless you see it, you won't believe it. But it's as if, again, let me give an analogy of an infinite ocean, right? This infinite ocean can never die. Now, the ocean starts to produce waves, okay? And now the waves have a birth, and anything that has a birth has a death. And so the waves appear to rise and then they fall, right? It appears as if the wave dies because it has a beginning and an ending. But that which the wave is made of never goes anywhere. The wave can never die. Only the appearance dies. But the wave is forever because that which it is made of is eternal. All of existence is made of the same eternalness, only believing itself to be mortal because it believes it's in the play of life and one of the objects of the play. And this is the separation. And so since it believes it's one of the objects in the play, it takes itself to be limited, imperfect, incomplete, in isolation. And yet, so it has to do things to fulfill its whole, or to try to get back to completeness. So it looks for things outside of itself to feel complete. And so the great suffering and illusion of man is his failure to experience that God that is his being. But rather, most men experience being separated from God. And this is why many people seek many different things for peace and happiness. The whole aim of a man's life is to experience that which is his own being, his true self, his true identity, which is not in isolation, not in separation from the whole. It's not in this that man finds true happiness or his true self, but only in the source or in God will he be complete. And again, your source is to be found beyond the mind, beyond good and evil. There is a field beyond good and evil, as a poet once said, and he said, "I will meet you there." It is not outside of you. It is beyond the mind. Can you rise above the mind and see that which the mind is known to? Can you know that? Because in that, put your whole being in that. Stop identifying with the things that you experience. You're none of those. You are the experiencer. Put your whole being and reside as that, and you will see that that never changes. That doesn't come and go. That is whole, complete. All desires are fulfilled in this. And then you will be back in paradise where Adam and Eve fell from. Back into God, where all things are in already. Only illusion veils us from this reality. So with that, shalom.